When you think about volunteering, what pops into your head? Maybe cleaning up a local park, right? Or serving meals at a shelter. But here's the thing. As the front lines of conflict are moving from way out on some distant battlefield right into our cities, and even our digital spaces, the whole idea of what it means to volunteer is being completely rewritten. So let's really get into this critical transformation.
And this quote, wow, it really hits home the stark reality of modern conflict. I mean, the traditional boundaries, they've completely blurred. We're talking about attacks on critical infrastructure, airports, energy facilities. What that really means is that civilians aren't just spectators anymore. Nope. They're direct targets, and the community itself, well, it becomes the battleground. So that familiar picture of volunteering as just social charity, it's giving way to a new, much more urgent reality. Today, volunteering is about organized civil defense. It's about forming actual cyber brigades to fight disinformation. And it's about being that absolutely essential first line of response when, let's face it, professional services are going to be completely overwhelmed. Okay, but here's where we run into a really dangerous paradox. Because while the will to help in a crisis is it's overwhelming, right? Our ability to actually help effectively often isn't. The source paper we're digging into today calls this huge mismatch the preparedness gap.
So, on one side of the coin, you have this sky-high motivation. I mean, when a crisis hits, the desire to help is just immense, right? We see it all the time. People are driven by patriotism, this deep sense of solidarity, and just that overwhelming need to do something. The will to act is just incredibly powerful. But here's the other side of that coin. This is where the paradox really bites. That amazing sky-high motivation, it's often matched with dangerously low preparedness. And let's be clear, enthusiasm is absolutely not a substitute for training. Without the right skills, those really well-meaning volunteers can actually become liabilities, or even worse, casualties themselves.
And you don't have to look far for a real-world example. The war in Ukraine is just a stark illustration of this. I mean, the spontaneous, whole-of-society volunteer response there was absolutely essential for the country's resilience. It was incredible. But at the same time, it threw the huge risks of being unprepared into sharp relief, and it highlighted these major gaps in both training and coordination. So if enthusiasm alone just isn't going to cut it, what do? How do we bridge this really dangerous gap? Well, the source material we're looking at provides a framework for action. It's a way to systematically understand and, improve wartime volunteering so that all those good intentions can actually translate into effective results. Okay, so the framework breaks it all down into 4 really critical stages. First, you've got to understand the motivation, what drives people to act in the first place. Then, that motivation has to be matched with the right preparedness, the actual skills they're going to need. After that, all those individual efforts need systematic coordination to actually work together. And only then, at the very end, can you measure the outcomes and see what kind of impact was made. So if we look a little closer at that first piece, motivation, it's about more than just patriotism. It's also about good old-fashioned altruism, about finding a social identity as part of a collective cause. And this is a big one. It's about seeking a sense of agency, finding a way to fight back against that profound, awful feeling of helplessness that a crisis can dump on you. And then you've got preparedness, which itself is being totally redefined. We are not just talking about basic first aid here. No way. We're talking about advanced, technical skills, stuff like logistics and medical triage. But just as important are the so-called soft skills, things like psychological resilience, trauma-informed care, and, wow, the ability to make tough ethical decisions under the most extreme pressure imaginable. Now, this whole new way of thinking has huge implications all over the world. The paper we're looking at really zooms in on the Gulf Cooperation Council, or the GCC. That's the political and economic alliance of 6 countries in the Middle East. It sees them as a key region that's really grappling with this new mandate for civil defense. And it's not like this is totally new for the region. If you look back at the Gulf War in the 1990s, you can see this history of really strong, community-based volunteering. The solidarity was absolutely incredible. But, and this is a big but, it was mostly informal. And that exposed a huge weakness. A real lack of structured, formal coordination.
Okay, so this history is what leads to a really crucial shift in thinking. For the GCC countries, volunteering isn't just some nice-to-have social activity anymore. Not at all. It's being strategically elevated to a core function of national security. It's seen as an absolutely essential pillar of what the paper calls societal resilience.
And the required skill set today, man, it totally reflects this new reality.
We're talking about volunteers needing training in things like drone identification and countermeasures, treating blast injuries and burns, managing complex logistics for food and water, even providing community mental health support and countering digital disinformation. Yeah, this is not your traditional bake sale volunteering. This is a highly specialized form of civil defense. In this quote, it just captures the strategic imperative perfectly. For this region, building a robust, highly trained volunteer corps isn't just some policy choice they're debating. No, it's a core part of a fundamental pivot toward greater national self-reliance in what is, let's be honest, a pretty volatile world.
But look, this isn't just some theoretical shift, right? It's not just ideas on a page. The source material actually lays out a concrete blueprint for action. It shows how nations can build this kind of deep resilience right from the ground up, how to turn all this theory into actual practice.
And the proposed solutions get really specific. We're talking about a multi-pronged strategy here. Things like establishing a national youth civil defense corps to get the next generation involved, integrating resilience training right into university curricula, creating specialized digital and cognitive warfare volunteer brigades, and, really important, developing a unified GCC-level framework so that mobilization can happen fast.
When you step back, the ultimate goal here is incredibly ambitious. It's about completely transforming volunteering from a simple act of charity into something much, much bigger. We're talking about a powerful engine for social cohesion, a source of shared national purpose, and a real cornerstone of strategic self-reliance.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty challenging question to think about. In a world where the front line could literally be anywhere, how prepared is your community, your city, your own neighborhood? How ready are you all to be your own first responders when a crisis finally strikes?